Hey, I'm Jerome from English Language Partners New Zealand. So a bit about where I'm coming from. My background is in education in adult literacy research, and these days I spend most of my research and personal time exploring how generative AI is reshaping what we do as language teachers, sometimes for the better and often in ways we are still working out. What I'd like to share today isn't a finished model. It's how one organization has tried to take on the question or challenge pedagogically and what we've learned in the process. So quick context on who we are and who we work with. We are a registered charity, a Category 1 NZQA provider with 21 locations across Aotearoa. So last year, we worked with around 7,900 adult learners, supported by close to 900 volunteer home tutors. So our learners came in with diverse first languages, different levels of prior schooling, and really mixed digital literacy. Some are tech confident, others have never typed on a keyboard before. So when we use AI here, we have to be deliberate, and this distinction shapes how we think about professional development at ELP. Now here's where it gets interesting for me and where this AI conversation starts. Because if you read what we say we are here to do, it's not a list of language skills, it's a list of lives. So live confident and independent lives, participate in Aotearoa, New Zealand society, access mainstream services, make connections, not be isolated, get a job or study further, know how to care for Aotearoa, understand rights and responsibilities in a bicultural and multicultural country. And right at the bottom, retain and share their own cultural identity. So this is the lens I bring to the AI question. Generative AI tools, as they currently exist, are trained predominantly on majority language, majority culture text. So they are noticeably weaker on local Kiwi English, Tertiary Maori, and many of our learners' first languages, and on the cultural framings those languages carry. Which means when we ask whether AI belongs in our teaching, we are not really asking a tools question. We are asking, does this technology support the kind of learning we say we are committed to, including identity, cultural continuity? So with that mission as our compass, we looked at what's happening on the ground. So I want to highlight that these 4 issues aren't research findings, but observations from our own context, read against the wider literature that tells us about how new technologies tend to land in education. So first, rising AI use, but no shared baseline. So from conversations across our centers, it was clear teachers were using AI very differently. Some confidently, some not at all. So learners were turning up having used it too. Second, uneven staff capability. And in adult ESOL, this matters more than it might in other settings. So the teacher carries an enormous amount of the learning. So through the relationship, through the moment-by-moment adjustment of language. So if half our teachers are uncertain about AI, half our learners are getting an inconsistent experience. Third, ethical and privacy uncertainty. So teachers are asking questions. Can I put a learner's writing into ChatGPT? What happens to that data? Is it okay if I use AI to plan my lesson but don't tell anyone? So which suggested that guidance was lagging behind practice. And fourth, risk to equitable outcomes. So there's a well-documented pattern in educational technology research. New tools tend to amplify existing advantage before they redistribute it. So the confident learner gets more confident, the fluent gets more fluent, and the already supported pulls further ahead. So for our learner population, refugee background, migrant, often working in their second or third language, without intentional design, AI doesn't close gaps, it widens them. So if those 4 issues are what we were watching for, the question becomes, where do you actually intervene? So first, we build teaching staff capability, teachers who are confident, but more importantly, critical with AI. We want AI to be integrated where it improves teaching and learning, not just where it happens to be available. So better design produces more responsive practice, materials adjusted faster, made more accessible to the learners. And responsive practice is what shapes learner outcomes, more relevant, more equitable learning for our learners. So the lever in this argument is teacher capability. So instead of the tools and the tech, it's the people using them and the judgment they bring. So when we designed our PD, we didn't start with the AI. We started with the teaching question and built outward. So we worked out where to start in 3 steps. First, the survey conducted in mid-2025. So it's an organization-wide instrument we call Teacher AI Use and Knowledge. 89 teaching staff responded. We asked what they were using, how familiar they were with the tools, and what concerned them. And here's what the data showed. So, almost half, 41 out of 89 or 46% of our teaching staff reported having little to no familiarity with Gen AI tools. So another 30 or 34% had only some familiarity, and only 18 staff or 20% rated themselves familiar or very familiar. So this is largely a story about exposure, not just confidence. Most of our staff hadn't yet had the chance to develop a working relationship with these AI tools, so let alone a critical one. So second, the working group, cross-center, deliberately mixed teachers, coordinators, staff who are already curious about AI. So their job was to interpret the survey findings and surface the tension inside them. Moving on, third, scoping. We translated what we learned into design priorities for our PD. So the workshops were a direct response to what the staff told. And that's an important distinction for our PD design. We can't ask teachers to think critically about technology they've barely encountered. So critique requires familiarity first. So the workshops had to do 2 things at once: build basic exposure of foundational AI literacy for those who needed it, and push the more familiar group toward more deliberate, pedagogically grounded use. And another quick one, what we drew on for our PD design. So the integration model came from TPAC, Mishra and Kofler's framework for combining technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge. It's nearly 2 decades old now, but it still offers a grounded understanding why technology integration depends on all 3 working together. For ethical principles, we drew on UNESCO's generative AI guidance from 2023, human-centered, education-focused, and importantly written for the global context, including settings where AI tools weren't built with our learners in mind. So UNESCO's AI competency framework for teachers from 2024 gave us a sense of what progression looks like, not just whether a teacher uses AI, but whether they are using it with agency, with ethical awareness, and in pedagogically grounded ways. And the Ministry of Education's Gen AI guidance kept us grounded in the local context, including the explicit reminder that current models are weaker on Ontario Maori or on Matauranga Maori. So just noting that these are the sources that shaped our PD design. So they aren't the only literature in the field. The applied linguistics work on AI in second language education is still emerging. So we are working in a fast-moving space, and we know this design will need to evolve as the research catches on. So pedagogy and ethics anchored in established frameworks. And with the survey findings and those frameworks in front of us, this is the PD model we built. So at the center is learner success. So AI integration and staff capability are the means. Learner success is the end. And around it, 4 things, and they hold each other up. So first, ethical guardrails, privacy, accuracy, authenticity, cultural integrity. So for example, we don't put learner data into consumer AI tools. We don't pass off AI-generated content as our own. We don't ignore what the model can do well, particularly with our learners' languages and cultures. Next, we have staff capability. So we are not after teachers who can use AI. We are after teachers who have critical confidence with it. So use is operational. Critical confidence means being able to judge when to use it, when not to, what to trust, what to question. That's the hardest skill. Reflection and governance. So these sit together because they are about checking in. Reflection at the teaching level. Is this working for my learners? So governance at the organizational level. Do our policies still hold up as the technology shifts? So both layers have to talk to each other. And finally, practice-based experimentation, bounded trials in real teaching. So teachers trying things in their actual classrooms with their actual learners and bringing what they find back into the conversation. So the reason these four exist around the center and not in a hierarchy is because in our experience, they prop each other up. So ethical guardrails without staff capability becomes paperwork no one can apply. And capability without experimentation stays theoretical. And experimentation without reflection becomes drift. And reflection without governance never travels beyond the individual teacher. So the model isn't really about AI. It's about how we hold ourselves accountable when we bring something this consequential into the work. So that's the PD model, and this is what we did to bring it to life. So first we have strategy work. So we convened an AI working group across centers. We drafted a position statement. We mapped organizational priorities. So the output was a shared vocabulary. So when one center says AI and another says AI, they actually mean the same thing. Particularly important in an organization that spreads across 21 centers. Next, professional development is the centerpiece. So workshops grounded in pedagogy first with prompt engineering frameworks like RTF, role, task, format, COSTAR. So that's context, objective, style, tone, audience response, and Ryzen. Role, instructions, stepped, angled, narrowing, but contextualized for ESO. So hands-on lesson design with prompts tailored for adult language learners. Next, practical guidance turned the ethical guardrails from the model into things teachers could use. So staff guidelines, access models for shared accounts, because we can't have everyone using their personal logins for organizational work, and clear advice on what data not to enter, names, identifying information, anything that belongs to a learner. So this is where ethics meets the everyday. And finally, implementation support. Pilot rollout in selected centers first, documentation for managers so they could support teachers locally, feedback channels so what we learned in one center could feed back into the design. So the reason these four streams sit side by side and not as a sequence is because they need each other. So strategy without PD is paperwork. PD without practical guidance leaves teachers exposed. Guidance without implementation support stays on the shared drive nobody opens. So we ran them together, overlapping, mutually reinforcing, and we're still iterating on all four. And the PD is where most of the substantive work happened. Here's the workflow we teach, 4 steps. Plan, ground, deliver, reflect. So number 1, plan. Decide the learning purpose first before we open any AI tool. So what am I trying to teach? Who's in the room? What does success look like for this lesson? If we can't answer those, AI isn't going to help us. It'll just give us something that looks polished and sends us off in the wrong direction. Number 2, ground. Anchor the AI in the actual context. Materials, learner level, cultural and linguistic situation. So generic prompts produce generic outputs, and generic outputs normally don't work as well for the learners. 3, deliver. And this is the framing that matters most for me. Use AI as a draft partner, as a thinking partner, and not a producer. So that phrase shifts the whole relationship. The AI offers something, we evaluate it, we revise, reject, rework. So the teacher remains the author, the pilot of the learning experience. 4, reflect. Afterwards, check, adapt, and decide what to keep, not just for this lesson, but for your evolving practice. what worked, what didn't, and what will I do differently next time. And underpinning that workflow, we teach prompt engineering frameworks, RTF, co-style Horizon, but as scaffolding. So the point isn't to memorize formulas, is to give teachers structured way of thinking through what they were asking for. So teachers who internalize the structure can then leave it behind. So the design principles on the right are what shaped the spirit of the workshops. So pedagogy before tools. We start with the learning question, always. So the AI conversation comes second. So never the other way around. Teacher agency, the principle I'm most committed to. Teachers who make the calls about what to keep, adapt, or reject. We aren't building compliance with an AI strategy. We are building professional judgment, one that allows teachers to say, actually, no, this is the wrong tool for this learner, and have that to be a legitimate, confident decision. Very culturally conscious practice. And here's where the conversation about model limitations on Tertiary Maori on our learners' first languages becomes practical. Teachers work through what it means for material design, when AI can help, when it can't, and when its suggestions need to be substantially reworked or rejected outright. Finally, ethical awareness woven in, privacy, accuracy, and bias are threaded through every task. So if we are drafting a worksheet, we are also asking, will I put a learner's writing into this prompt? If we are reviewing AI output, we are asking, where might this be subtly wrong and will my learners notice? So the combination of these four principles is what made the PD different, not just another tools session. So it's more like a teaching conversation that happens to involve AI. So 2 findings I'll share. After the workshops, every single respondent agreed they felt more confident using AI in their teaching. So that tells us the PD is landing. And on ethics, 95% report understanding the ethical considerations of using AI in ESOL classrooms. So the remaining 5% sit at neutral, again, no disagreement. So confidence is up, ethical awareness is up. So that's encouraging, but it's also where I want to be careful. So because feeling confident isn't the same as practicing differently, understanding ethics isn't the same as applying ethics. So this is what we're measuring next. First, practice change. Are teachers making different design choices or just talking about AI more fluently? Next, sustained use. Does this stick after the workshop fades? 3, quality of integration. When AI is used, does it improve the lesson? And by what evidence? And 4, equity of impact. Is improved teacher capability translating into more equitable access and outcomes for our learners? So what's coming out the other side? So on the seeing side, and these are early signals, not findings, we're just noticing 4 things. The first is faster turnaround on differentiated worksheets for mixed level classes. Differentiation used to take hours. Now it takes a fraction of that when it's done well. More accessible plain language explanations for low literacy learners. So AI is genuinely good at simplifying language while keeping meaning intact. And that's been a useful tool for teachers working with learners who are still building basic literacy alongside English. 3, quicker drafting of context-relevant multimodal texts, local events, region-specific content, things that connect to what's happening in our learners' lives. A rating text about Cyclone Gabrielle when that's still recent for our learners. So that kind of contextual responsiveness used to require finding or commissioning material. So now teachers can draft something themselves and adapt it. And the one I find most interesting, teachers more willing to redesign rather than reuse old materials. So because once you've experienced what AI can help you generate, the cost of starting fresh drops. So that's a subtle but important shift in teacher practice. Nonetheless, the project has also surfaced questions that we haven't yet positioned to answer. So first is whether AI use translates into improved retention or completion. whether AI-supported drafting can ever be equivalent to specialist materials development by trained writers, whether AI is appropriate in every context and with every learner group. So some of our learners are working through trauma. Some don't yet have the digital literacy to engage with AI safely, and that deserves dedicated investigation. And whether this approach scales without continued investment in capability and reflection. So that's where we are. Real signals on one side, real questions on the other. AI in adult ESOL is useful when it's carefully held, and that the field needs more research to work out where the limits are. So if I had to summarize the whole ELP's AI for Enhanced Teaching project on one slide, this is it. First, we survey organization-wide before we do anything else. The data shapes everything that follows. We convene a working group, cross-center, mixed roles, and their job is to read the data with us and surface tensions. We anchor the work in established frameworks, TPAC for the integration logic, UNESCO for the ethics, the MOE's guidance for a local context. We design PD around 4 principles: pedagogy first, teacher agency, cultural awareness, ethics woven through. And finally, we reflect openly, including in this presentation, on what's working, what isn't, and what still needs investigation. So if any of you are thinking about doing something similar in your own setting, this may be the floor. One survey, one working group, one framework anchor, a few well-designed workshops, and the discipline to keep reflecting honestly. And if there's one thing that I want to leave you with is the line on this slide. Meaningful AI integration begins with the people, pedagogy, ethics, and learner purpose, not with tools. So, and the order matters. People first, because capability is the lever, and our teachers carry an enormous part of the learning. Pedagogy second, because the learning question has to come before the tool question. Ethics third, because privacy, accuracy, and cultural integrity have to be designed in, not bolted on. And learner purpose always, because if a technology doesn't serve learner success equitably, then it doesn't belong in our work. And that's the order in which we try to build this. And it's the order I'll offer to anyone else thinking about doing the same. So, ngā mihi nui, thank you for listening.